Hello again, politically incorrect old white guy here today. I normally opine on the subject of politics. I'm going to take a little break from that today, although I will be returning to that field of endeavor in my next session, which will be related to this one in a tenuous way. Today, I'm going to talk about one of the freedoms that we enjoy as Americans, and that is the freedom to own firearms. And specifically in this case, I'm going to talk about sporting firearms as opposed to competition firearms or strictly defense-related firearms. So this is a passion of mine, and you'll forgive me if I go on a bit. I'm going to give you a frugal gun owner's point of view on a practical battery of firearms that you might want to own, which will serve you across the spectrum of sporting and hunting activities without busting the bank. So that's where the frugal comes in. It's also a little bit of a eccentric point of view. It's not the mainstream common advice that other people will give you. So hopefully you'll find it interesting. So normally, every battery of firearms, everyone you ask would say that you need to have a 22 rimfire rifle in your little collection. And there's really nothing wrong with that advice because 22 ammunition is so cheap and easily available. And the little 22 is very capable of taking all small game without a lot of fuss and noise and what have you. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your point of view, we all live in quote unquote settled areas these days. There are very few of us that have the luxury of living like our forebears did in wide open country where neighbors are few and far between. So that is a consideration. I'm going to differ with I'm going to take a little different path on the subject of a small game firearm and suggest that the low end of your battery can consist of a air rifle, and specifically a 22 caliber air rifle. Here you have, it's backwards, unfortunately, because of the way these cameras work, but here you have a tin of 22 caliber air rifle pellets, and they're tiny little things, weighing about 15 grains, which is about half of what a 22 long rifle projectile weighs, mainly because they have the same diameter, obviously, a 22 air rifle and a 22 long rifle. They have the same diameter, but the shape of the 22 pellet is such that it's not as heavy. It's hollow in the base, and it's shaped like a Diablo for ballistic reasons. So it weighs about half of what a 22 weighs. Here is my 22 air rifle. So practice what you preach. It is a Diana. I'm not sure whether you're going to be able to see this because of the lighting, but it is a Diana model 48. It has a Williams aperture sight mounted on it, which is a simple, rugged, and accurate sighting system. And it's a side cocker. It's not a pre-charged pneumatic air rifle. Those are popular, but expensive, and they require all sorts of paraphernalia to periodically pump up your air reservoir. This is a side cocker. You cock the rifle or cock the piston by exercising this lever. I won't do it all the way because then I'll have to decock it. You place the projectile into this port. Once it opens when the lever is actuated, and then you're ready to go. You fire your shot and you repeat. This is capable of killing pretty much all small game at distances of about up to 50 yards, which is all you need to shoot squirrels, pests like skunks and possums, even rats, which is something that I have to do because we have a good number of them running around in this part of Texas. You're not going to be able to shoot medium-sized game with it, such as or medium-sized animals such as coyotes, bobcats, and the like. Certainly not anything bigger than that. But it will serve you very well for your small game needs, and it'll put game in the pot, including birds. I spent hours as a youngster shooting birds with a 177 air rifle, and that's where I honed my hunting and shooting skills. Shooting birds up to the size of a pheasant or I was going to say a duck, but it's not legal to shoot ducks with any kind of rifle, let alone with an air rifle. But yeah, you can keep yourself fed and entertained quite nicely with the 22 air rifle. It's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. You can buy a good quality one, such as this Diana, which is made in West Germany. You can buy one used for well under $500. You can buy a cheaper Chinese-made one. I don't have much experience with them, but you can buy them for $200. I just would advise you to do some research as to the durability and quality of whatever you buy before you buy it. So that's the foundation of your sporting arms battery if you're a frugal sportsman like me. Next up on the chain, you need something big enough to shoot coyotes, foxes, bobcats, and those types of varmint, prairie dogs. If you live in the east, rock chucks, woodchucks in the east, rock chucks in the west. That class of game, and even up to and including small deer. The conventional wisdom on that piece of the puzzle is a small caliber centerfire rifle, such as a 223. I mention that because the ammunition is so easily available and inexpensive. In my opinion, 223 is a good choice if you are going to do mainly longer range sniping at sage rats and prairie dogs and what have you, out to 300, 400, 500 yards. But most of us don't do much of that. Our range is restricted to maybe 100 and 150 yards on smaller critters. And my recommendation for that niche is a cartridge which was popular in its day, but it's more or less it's obsolescent now. It's the 2520. The 2520 is a little rimmed cartridge, centerfire cartridge, that's loaded typically with an 86 grain jacketed soft point. You can see that. I would note that the North American record white-tailed deer was shot with exactly that cartridge out of a lever action rifle, which is one option, many years ago. So it is definitely capable of shooting a small deer. I wouldn't take it on a mule deer hunt, but small deer at short range, typically in settled country, in the hardwoods, in brush, such as we have here in Texas, it's capable of doing the job. And from there down, it's certainly capable of taking predators such as coyote, which is a sport unto itself, for the art of decoying or calling coyote and ridding one's property of that type of predator. It's a perfect cartridge for that. The other benefit that it has is that in the form of a cast bullet load, and that's a cast lead bullet with a gas check, and this particular one is 75 grain cast load, but you can get, I believe you can get 60 grain cast molds as well to cast 60 grain bullets. Because the velocity of the rifle is fairly modest, you don't need a fully jacketed bullet. Cast bullets in gas check form can be pushed to close to 2,000 feet per second without a problem, which is zipping right along. Back in the day when it was popular, that was considered a high velocity load. But the benefit of a cast load is that it's very inexpensive. You make your own bullets with a simple mold and some kind of way to melt your lead. You don't use pure lead. You use the classic source of bullet metal is linotype, which is, I guess, it's gone out of fashion. You can buy the same thing today, but the frugal hunter will use wheel welts, which you can get for nothing from your local tire shop. And you might add a little solder, like tin bearing solder to your wheel weights to improve the alloy a bit. And you make a very effective bullet. It has a flat nose, which has good shocking power. And so your only cost, since you're reloading your brass is reusable, your only cost really is your primer, which is about 2 cents these days, maybe a bit more, maybe 3. And your little pinch of powder, really pistol powder in the cast load, such a tiny pinch is going to cost you a cent or less. So for about the same cost as a 22 long rifle, and certainly cheaper than a 22 Magnum, you have a cartridge that's more, or you have a firearm that's more capable than either of those. You wouldn't want to shoot a deer with a 22 or a 22 Magnum, but you can certainly shoot a deer with a 25-20. So that's my number 2 recommendation for the next step up from your air rifle. There are a number of choices. I mentioned the lever actions. This was since it's a rim cartridge, this cartridge was quite popular back in the day as a chambering for the common lever action rifles, such as the Winchester 1892. I'm not a big lever action fan, so my rifle is a single shot. That right there is a Stevens 44, which was not offered in 25-20, if I'm correct. It was offered in something called a 25-20 single shot, which is a different cartridge, which is more complicated to make since it's not available commercially. This rifle of mine is engraved by myself. On one side, a turkey, which in many states is ideal quarry for a 25-20 rifle. The other side is engraved with the image of a fox, which is another typical quarry for this setup. And the story is the fox is chasing the turkey. So there you have it. This is a no recoil what to speak of. So you have a steel, crescent steel butt plate. Again, I like the aperture sight. So I have here a modern folding aperture sight in it, and I find that quite effective and accurate at the ranges we're speaking of here. In fact, I've removed the conventional rear sight from the rifle because I don't use it at all. And I've shot a number of things with this rifle, from skunks to I shot a running fox once with this rifle, running flat out, I might add. But yeah, it's just a neat old rifle. I mentioned they didn't make them in 2520. This one is actually marked 2520. Right there, you see the caliber marking, but that on a Stevens would have been a 2520 single shot. Now, what I did with this rifle was because it, like so many vintage rifles, it was pretty much, the bore was pretty much shot out, is I relined it, which means you drill out the barrel, you insert a new barrel, but a skinny barrel into the original barrel, and you chamber it for whatever you wish. And in my case, I chambered it for the 2520 Winchester centerfire, WCF, is the technical term. 2520 WCF Winchester centerfire. It was a Winchester cartridge. Marlin came out with a similar cartridge, which is essentially interchangeable, and they called it something. They didn't want to use the name Winchester, so they came up with their own name for it, but it's the same thing. The other option you can go with on the 2520, and since I'm not as frugal as I'm pretending to be, I have a bolt action rifle in 2520, and this was a factory chambering, and this is a Savage Sporter, it's called. It's, to be technically correct, I think it's a 23 B was the model number. It's a interesting rifle in that the barrel and the action are all one piece. It's a tubular action, and there's no separate action. That the barrel and the action are all one piece of steel. Aside from that, it's pretty standard bolt action with a clip, a removable clip. Don't have it installed in the rifle here for safety reasons. And it typically on a rifle like this, I would normally, as I mentioned, use an aperture sight, but I broke my own rule and I put a little 22, old style 22, I think it's a Weaver scope on it to get that full accuracy potential. The cartridge is quite accurate, especially if you reload and tailor the loads. So I put a scope on it. These rifles, this particular model, evolved over time, and some of them were drilled and tapped for scopes and others were not. This one had to be custom mounted on a little rail here. It's just a dovetail, a 3/8 inch dovetail. But when you get to doing some precision shooting, as I mentioned, shooting sage rats, for example, if you live on the western slope, you will find sage rats in all the alfalfa fields. I used to live in Oregon, and that was one of my pastimes, was sniping sage rats, which are about the size of a beer can, and at 100 to 150 yards, which is about the limit of this caliber. You can shoot further if you use a rangefinder, but guesstimating 100 to 150 yards, you really want a scope to get that last bit of accuracy on those little targets. So this is my scoped 25-20. And why the Savage? Well, very few, because it's a rimless cartridge, a rimmed cartridge rather, very few manufacturers made a bolt action in 25-20. Savage was one. A more modern one is a Kimber, which is hard to find, very hard to find, and collectible and quite expensive. But that's kind of the Cadillac in this genre. And there may be one or two others that don't come to mind immediately that were offered in 25-20 bolt actions. You can get some nice pump actions in that caliber, not too expensive. Marlin made one, excuse me, and so did Remington, which they, in their appropriately named Model 25. So you can go with a pump action as well. That's just as equivalent to a lever action in terms of handiness, and the tubular magazine that you can load a dozen rounds into, and there you see the bullets have a flat point, specifically because so many of these rifles had tubular magazines, and you don't want a pointed bullet in a tubular magazine. Or at least that's the conventional wisdom. So that now takes care of 60% of any hunting you might do. Those two, the 22 air rifle and the 25-20 centerfire rifle. For bigger game, your choice will depend on where you live to some extent. Most of us live in areas where hunting is done at short distances. For example, bear hunting, elk, in some cases, not so much mule deer. Mule deer hunting is often done in open areas where your shots are going to be pretty long. But for those of us that don't live in the West or get out West very much, you're not going to need something that shoots that you can blast away at 300, 400, 500 yards. And that's not typically, in my mind anyway, that's not very sporting. When you're hunting, you want to be up close and personal. So much so that I would actually consider some options in this third slot. One being a bow and arrow, which has got an effective range of 30 to 50 yards, depending on the skill of the archer. But a bow and arrow is quite capable of, in compound form or recurve or even longbow form, quite capable of taking anything in North America, and is, I would recommend having one and learning to use one, because that will make you a much better hunter than the majority of hunters that really don't hunt, they shoot. They shoot at long range. Bow hunting is up close and personal, and you have to be a real skilled hunter to be effective. So I would consider a bow as a candidate for the third slot. It fits into my frugal category because it costs nothing, unless you might lose an arrow, I guess. But ammunition is 100% reusable, which is your arrow. You might lose or break a blade once in a while, so 50 cents, that's it. Failing that, not everyone has the patience to become a bow hunter. Failing that, I would make another slightly eccentric recommendation that you're not going to hear from anybody else, and that is again backwards, but that is the Brennecke shot shell. Now, Brennecke was a German guy, inventor, who invented a couple of different calibers and is well known over there. But he invented in particular this style of slug called a Brennecke slug, which this is a 20 gauge, which is all you need. This is a 1 ounce slug. And these are also made, this was made by Brennecke USA. These are also made by a company called Rio. They're inexpensive compared to heavy caliber centerfire ammunition. Maybe about $2 a pop, something like that. You know, $10 for a box of 5, or maybe even less. I haven't bought any for some time. And what's remarkable about them is one, knockdown power. The police use them for roadblocks for a reason. They penetrate and have a lot of knockdown power. And number two, they're surprisingly accurate out of a smooth bore. The Brennecke cartridge or concept, you can see it, the depiction of it on the back of the case here, is not hollow like a Foster slug, which is much lighter in weight and less effective. It's solid, and it has these fins on it, which look like rifling, and it has attached to the base a wad, which together make this ammunition exceptionally accurate and quite capable of killing anything up to a moose or a brown bear, because of the diameter. The 20 gauge is 0.625. That's bigger than any centerfire rifle. And these slugs penetrate. I've shot a number of things with mine. In my case, my Brennecke rifle, my 20 gauge, is a side-by-side, which has a little folding rear sight. Other than that, it looks just like any other side-by-side smoothbore shotgun. It's not rifled. You probably won't be able to see that anyway, but it's a conventional smoothbore. The Brennecke will shoot out of a cylinder choke, an improved cylinder, modified, and even out of a full choke, although that is not the most accurate setup. You want a improved cylinder or a modified bore. You don't have to have a side-by-side. You can use a pump action if you want to be frugal. This is not a terrifically expensive firearm. These were made for me to my specification by a company in Turkey. And the idea was to make something that looked a bit like a double rifle, the full length trigger tang, the pistol grip, the folding sight, and so on. That's a trigger plate action, if you know what that is. Has a little bit of engraving on it. There's a deer on the bottom, which you may be able to see. And it's inscribed shot and ball, which brings me to my second point. That's an old-fashioned term that's used to describe a firearm like this. It shoots both shot, as in traditional shotgun ammunition, and ball, which in this case is Brennecke bullets. The old timers used the shot and ball for the same reason that I'm recommending them. They're effective on a wide variety of game, both from big game down to birds. And with one gun, you can pretty much take care of what needs to be taken care of, including, for example, squirrels. If you're out in the bush and you're getting a little bit peckish and you don't have any rations, you can feed yourself with one of these. I'm an avid bird hunter, and I like side-by-side guns, so I decided to go with this configuration. And I can shoot ducks with it. I can shoot deer with it. I've shot, among other things, a warthog in Africa. and an Impala in Africa with this particular rifle. I shot an eland with a similar rifle, also a side-by-side 20 gauge, but in that case, the firearm is called a paradox, which is a Holland and Holland term. The last 4 inches of the bore are rifled and heavily choked, and you can shoot. The concept of paradox was it was neither a gun nor a rifle. It was a paradox. It was both. So, there's various means to achieve the same end here. I would go with a smooth bore and Brennecke because the Brennecke does not require a rifled bore. You can shoot it through a smooth bore, so you don't need a dedicated rifled barrel. You can go with just a simple pump action, inexpensive pump action gun like a Ithaca or a Remington 870 single barrel gun, for 250 to $350 and achieve the same result. You're going to have to do something about a sight. Those companies do offer separate barrels that you can swap in and out that have sights on them. Ithaca had a barrel which they called the Slugger, I believe, which has sights. Remington 870 you can buy fully rifled barrels for, which is also an option if you want to go that way. But I like these because you don't have to swap barrels. You've got a very nice heavy slug. 20 gauge is perfectly adequate. You don't need to go up to 12 gauge. And you're prepared for anything. You can even put a shell in one barrel and a Brennecke slug in the other barrel. So if you're, for example, calling, you can use the shot or with 2 triggers. You can at your immediately available. You have a choice of either the shell or the slug. Very versatile. In fact, I would go so far as to say, if you had to have only one gun in your battery, something like this is it. You can shoot anything from squirrels up to elk and moose with it. The only limitation being range. With a shotgun, your effective range is probably 50 yards. With a slug, you can push it out to 100. Again, you're not going to make any 300-yard shots with this, but again, that's an unusual shot, and it's not a very sporting shot. If you're doing this for sport, up close and personal is a lot more exciting than blasting away long range. So there you have, and I'll add one last point. I said we were going to talk about sporting use, but if you do need a firearm for home defense purposes, the term shotgun marriage was invented for a reason. This is the shotgun they were referring to. And you put 2 shot shells in there, buckshot, and you will be very well defended if you need to have a defensive weapon for your home. It's not something you're going to be able to carry around in public, but that is so restricted in this day and age that it's just you've got to jump through so many hoops to carry that most people don't bother. And that's going to be the subject of my next video, which is going to be on the subject of our freedoms, and specifically the word freedom and what that really means, or whether that's actually lost its meaning in this day and age in the United States. So I hope you found this a little bit more interesting than the usual political diatribe. We will return to that next time, and I wish you happy hunting.